I'll go back to the JavaScript code here, and I'll start by showing this with, well, one very important event, for example. On the window object, we have the load event, and I can add an event handler to this event with onLoad property here on the window object. I then assign a function, an anonymous function here, which should handle this loading event whenever it occurs. I will then print out window loaded. If I now run this code, what do you think will happen? I get window loaded because it's initially being executed, which means this onLoad handler is being recognized, is registered, and then when the window actually loads, well, this code here is run. So this is an event handler which is always executed whenever the window loads, which is of course an important event because at this point of time we know that, well, the window was loaded, the code is available, we can safely work with it. Therefore, you might sometimes need this onLoad listener to do certain initialization tasks, as you can be sure that the window was successfully loaded at this point of time. You can also see very well how events are actually handled. We use the onLoad property on the window object and we assign an anonymous function which is therefore registered as such an event handler. And of course we not only have the onLoad event handler, we can also listen to other events. Let's say I add a new button element in my HTML code and this button says click me, but it doesn't have any other logic attached to it. If I wanted to listen to any events on this button, or if I want to handle the click event on this button, I'll first fetch the button with a query selector here, button. I'm just selecting by the tag name here, so by this name, button. And then I can access my button, and with onClick, I can set up an onClick event handler. And I can then print something, for example, clicked. If I now click on, well, clear and then on run, what do you think will happen? Well, nothing for now because I only set up this onClick handler. So this should only get executed if I actually click on the button, which I haven't done yet. So now if I click on the button, now we see clicked. So now this function, which is set up as an onClick listener, is executed. And of course, this function is executed every time I click on this button. So that's really powerful. But of course, you might ask, how do I know which functions are available on a specific HTML element? The answer to this is you can either log out the element to the console and then have a look at all the properties, and you will identify the event handlers by the on at the beginning and then the name of the event. Or of course, and that is no joke but a valid approach, you simply Google for JavaScript and then the element name and then events, and you should find lists with all the events. And that is a very valid approach to finding out about them because there are a lot, but of course the most common ones like clicking, mouse enter, mouse leave, and so on are always included. Also note, you can not only listen to onClick on buttons or links, you can add these event handlers on any HTML element, even if it normally isn't clickable. But in the end, you can click everywhere in the browser, right? So you can listen to it everywhere. You can even set up an event handler, an onClick event handler, on the document itself. If I now hit run, you will see I get clicked no matter where I click. So that will work too. This is how you set up an event handler, and I will change this back to button. But there is one major disadvantage of this approach here. Imagine I want to execute two functions whenever I click this button. So I have another event handler here which says also clicked. If I now, after hitting run with JS, click on this button, what do you think we'll see in the console? We only see also clicked. So the first event handler here is simply overwritten. It's no longer there. And that is a problem because oftentimes you'll need multiple listeners and you don't only want to have one handler. So while this approach works fine as long as you only have one thing you want to execute, it certainly has its problems if you have multiple functions you want to call. Therefore, in the next lecture, we'll have a look at an alternative.